Oh, okay. Good afternoon. We're going to have a little quick live stream before the first FA Cup semi-final between Manchester City and Liverpool. There are some things to discuss with this upcoming semi-final at Wembley as well. A lot of issues going into the semi-final with transport issues getting into London from the north of England. And both Man City and Liverpool, as soon as they were announced in the draw to play each other, they both put in requests to the FA to have the FA Cup semi-final at Wembley's date moved to a different location for accessibility because there's no trains in and out of North London out of Euston Station. The FA refused that request, and so therefore we'll be interested to see the crowd numbers that are in attendance today are from the Liverpool and Man City fan bases. And it'll be interesting to see, how many have actually made it down by hook or by crook or by other means. But this raises, further questions about should the semi-finals be at Wembley or should they be at neutral locations like they were in the past. Um, Other issues, obviously, Sean Dyche being sacked by Burnley yesterday, following on from that defeat by Norwich. Very surprised by the timing of that dismissal in regards to the fact that there's only 8 games left. And he was the longest serving manager in the Premier League. I think that means the bottom three are now settled for relegation. I think Everton are now safe. I think that's got Everton safe now, unless whoever comes in to the Burnley hot seat can win. Go on a winning run and put pressure on Everton. I can see Everton being most likely safe with the points they've already acquired, and the gap between Everton and the bottom three. I can't see Watford and I can't see Norwich closing that gap, overhauling Burnley and closing that gap. So I think that could be Burnley relegated this season. Also, yesterday, Scunthorpe United have been relegated out of the Football League. They lost 3-0 to Leyton Orient. Their 72-year stay in the Football League is going to be at the end come the end of this season. Um, I remember not that long ago they were in the Championship, so it's been a club that has had a lot of issues off the field and has tumbled down the divisions and has paid the price for bad ownership basically. And their stay in the Football League is at an end after 72 years. It'll be interesting to see if they can bounce back at the first attempt. It'll be interesting to see what direction the club takes from here. But the National League is a notoriously hard league to get out of into the Football League. There's a lot of ex-Football League clubs, fighting to get out of the National League right now. And some clubs have not got back to the Football League since being relegated down there. So it's going to be tough, I think, for Scunthorpe United to to battle back to the Football League status that they've had for 72 years. That's the first English club to be officially relegated this season, although I think Derby County won't be far away from the Championship. Taking off the points deductions and adding those points that they've had deducted back on, yes, they're safe from relegation and lower mid-table in the Championship, and you have to commend Wayne Rooney for the work that he's done. And when vacancies at other clubs in England came up in the Premier League and Championship, he turned down those offers to go elsewhere. So you have to credit Wayne Rooney for his commitment to the cause at Derby County and trying to keep them as competitive as possible. But I think their time in the Championship is going to come to an end very, very soon. The playoff hunt is getting tense. Fulham have the opportunity in their next game to win promotion. Um, outright. It'll be interesting to see if Fulham can achieve that goal before the end of the season, get it done as soon as possible with games in hand. I think that'd be beneficial for Fulham. So the playoff hunt in the Championship is hotting up. The relegation fight, I think the bottom three in the Championship is the bottom three that's going to go down. I can't see Reading being caught by the clubs below them. However, there's still games left. There's still games to play out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. There's ongoing issues with Everton, of course, and they could be hit with a points deduction for next season. That's an interesting situation. Of course, they are above the relegation zone by 4 points. They won their last game, which has been crucial. But Frank Lampard is a manager under a lot of pressure at Everton. Whether he was the right appointment for the situation and the club, that's open to debate. So we can discuss that until the end of time. Uh, but at the moment, he's keeping them above the bottom three. Again, as I say, what happens with Burnley is going to prove crucial. Watford as well. They're on their third manager of the season. Norwich, all all of the bottom four have changed manager this season. That's what's very striking. In fact, I think all of the bottom seven have changed manager this season, at least once, Watford twice. And I always say this: clubs that regularly change the manager are less stable and less successful. And Sean Dyche was a massive stabilising factor for that football club for so long, so long, for a decade. Now with his sacking, Jurgen Klopp is now the longest-serving Premier League manager at a club. That is really, really interesting. What is also interesting, hasn't won the FA Cup yet with Liverpool. So today's match is crucial against Man City. Their last meeting ended in a 2-2 draw. I'm expecting very similar again today. Very, tactical affair, possibly. Um, and both sides obviously having those epic European nights. How much is that taken out of them? And that'll be interesting to see how much the European Champions League matches that they played in midweek, how much that has impacted squad selection, squad rotation. That's going to be very, very interesting to see what the starting lineups are and how many minutes players play. Um, but yeah, this is a crunch match for both clubs. Man City are favourites for league and cup double, and the Champions League with the bookmakers. But Liverpool are still in the mix as well for three trophies. It's going to in fact, Liverpool are actually in the mix for four trophies this season, and of course, tomorrow's semi-final between Palace and Chelsea is also one of much importance. A London derby, a West-South London derby, and Palace are, I think, the dark horses in this regard because they didn't play in midweek. They haven't got that fatigue, so they could be fresher for the challenge and shouldn't be underestimated on Patrick Vieira because they've been playing exceptionally well under Patrick Vieira. Their form recently is better than Chelsea. I think Chelsea are vulnerable. Um, so Palace could sneak into the FA Cup final. Now, what they do at that FA Cup final, if should they get there, it's going to be a tall order against both Liverpool and Man City, whoever makes it out of the first semi-final. Um, as was being discussed, the debate around having both semi-finals at Wembley has been a hot debate for a very, very long time. And fans want to see the semi-finals go back to neutral grounds, unlike Hillsborough and Villa Park, for example, though they were traditionally played for a very, very long time. Been a huge debate about taking the FA Cup semi-finals to neutral grounds that are neutral. And in regards of City and Liverpool, the FA has been aware of this engineering work taking place on the railway north of London for 3 years. They've been fully aware for 3 years about the travel disruption getting into London from the north of England, and they still, refused to move that semi-final. So that I think is where fans get frustrated with football's governance. Fans feel like they're the last to be thought of. Ticket price with Wembley's been heavily criticised in the past with Club Wembley. The fact that the FA has been fully aware of this situation for so long has left fans frustrated and angry, and rightly so. Um, the FA and various sports organisations proved that they could reorganise things to do with COVID quite quickly. The Champions League final will be moved from St. Petersburg to Paris, happened in the space of 3 days. So governing bodies have proven that they can act in interests of fans and on a quick basis. The fact that the FA steadfastly refused the request from Liverpool and Man City to have the semi-final moved to a different ground is just heavy criticism aimed at the FA, and it'll be interesting to see the crowd numbers for the first semi-final. How many empty seats are there? How many fans have actually made it to London? I know Liverpool, Man City are global brands; they have fans all over the country. But still, the majority of their fans will be travelling from the northwest. The fact that the FA has steadfastly refused to move the game, yes, I know there's contractual obligations and media obligations obviously in place. However, it's not gone down very well with both sets of fans, and and even those neutrals, those who don't support either club, are like, well, this just shows the regard or the disregard that the FA has for the football fan base. We're always an afterthought. We're never, consulted with these things. Um, and it has left many fans very, very frustrated with the FA. So it'll be interesting to see, as I say, the crowd numbers, how many empty seats, what the atmosphere is like, um, because it, it, it it's been a known issue that Wembley and the FA have known about for 3 years. The likelihood of a club from the northwest making a semi-final was quite high, considering the amount of clubs in the Premier League from the northwest. The likelihood of a club from the north making the FA Cup semi-final, as I say, was quite high. The it has left fans very frustrated and angry, and rightly so. So that's something that the FA has got to take that criticism on board, and this is where fans are pushing for a return to neutral venues for uh, the FA Cup semi-finals. Um, I understand why the FA has decided to move the semi-finals to Wembley initially to pay off the stadium and to maximise revenue. I completely understand that. It makes sense for Palace and and Chelsea fans, and Chelsea that semi-final. It makes logical sense. But even if there was a neutral ground, can you imagine if the neutral ground was in Birmingham or in Manchester? The Palace and Chelsea fans wouldn't be able to get to Manchester because again of this railway engineering work that's taking place that the FA has been fully aware of. It has got to be. There's also issues within the London Transport Network as well, strikes and reduced services. So it'll be interesting to see what the crowd numbers are like over the two semi-finals at Wembley. But there's a lot of criticism being levelled at the FA right now. We're just over an hour and a bit till kick-off for the first semi-final. But as I say, the crowd numbers and the atmosphere and how many fans make it is going to be very, very interesting. And we'll obviously have to see um, what the game is like as well. The conditions are perfect. You couldn't ask for better playing conditions. It's a nice temperature outside. There's a gentle breeze. It's in the early 20s in degrees Celsius. Um, so, as I say, the playing conditions are perfect for the style of football that both sides play. So it's going to be a very, very good game. The conditions tomorrow are good as well. So weather conditions are just perfect for the for football. Absolutely perfect weather conditions. I think Crystal Palace are a dark horse to make the final. I think the Liverpool, Man City, how tired will their players be in regards to, as I say, to the Champions League Champions League quarterfinals they played in midweek? How much has that taken out the playing squads? And I think Palace are the freshest of the four teams. They haven't had a midweek game to consider. That goes to their benefit. Although Conor Gallagher will not be playing because of his loan spell from Chelsea. Chelsea have blocked him from playing as part of the loan agreement. And he is key for Palace. So that is a key loss for Crystal Palace because he's cup died. So that's met with some criticism as well. He was left. Patrick Vieira was frustrated with that, and Conor Gallagher was also left frustrated. Fans have been left frustrated because he's actually a very young, capable, talented player. He's now been capped by England. He's in the consideration to go to the World Cup, and there is some frustration levelled at Chelsea for not negotiating to allow him to play. So there is that. Whilst we quickly check some other sports news. So yeah, there is some criticism about Conor Gallagher not being eligible to play, but the cup tie rule is a frustrating rule that's in place and has been in place for many, many years. Let's look at the sports headlines. Let's have a look. What's happening? What's happening sports wide? What is happening? Premier League is 0-0 between Tottenham and Brighton at the moment. The Women's FA Cup semi-final, Man City have beaten West Ham. Hearts have beaten Hibs to reach the Scottish Cup final. Thomas Tuchel has apologised to Gallagher for the FA Cup block on the grounds of being cup tied. There's rugby. More news coming out of Burnley. Sean Dyche. Burnley players are in shock after manager sacking interim boss Mike Jackson has said. Burnley players were in shock after Sean Dyche's sacking, but do not have time to dwell on the situation, says interim boss Mike Jackson. Dyche was dismissed yesterday after 10 years in charge at Turf Moor, with the Clarets 18th in the Premier League and 4 points from safety. Jackson, who's Burnley's under-23s coach, has taken over for Sunday's match against West Ham. I think it's come to the shock to the players. It's human nature, but they are an experienced group. For us, it's about the whole club coming together. Everyone here, the fans. Burnley have lost 5 of the last 6, with only 8 games remaining. Until his sacking, Dyche was the Premier League's longest-serving manager, but they lost 2-0 to Norwich. Jackson, who's interim boss, the former Tranmere and Shrewsbury manager, said he would not be making big changes to the team before the trip to London. There's a lot of good here, a lot of brilliant work has been done already, and it's about reminding them to do better. The thing is, Sean Dyche signed a 4-year contract until 2025 last year in September, so that is interesting. They gave him a contract extension. He got into European qualification. But yeah, their season just never got going. I can see why fans are frustrated. Rugby union. Glenn Moore, the New Zealand women's head coach, has stepped down. New Zealand women's head coach Glenn Moore has resigned after allegations against him prompted a team culture review. That's interesting. Hooker Te Kura Nagata had alleged in a social media post that critical comments from Moore resulted in a mental breakdown. I did not agree with the allegations she made, and they were misleading. He said in his resignation statement. He became Black Ferns' boss in 2015. He won the 2017 World Cup with them. The New Zealand Union's rugby chief executive, Mark Robinson, had previously backed Moore to continue his role for October's World Cup. However, Robinson had issued an apology to elite players earlier this week after the review said the governing body had failed to support the women's high performance programme sufficiently. All focus needs to be maximising performance. I think it's in the best interest of the team that I move stand down. So Glenn Moore, the New Zealand women's head coach, has resigned. So this Easter weekend has been brutal for head coaches and teams. More news about the Kinahan cartel. Daniel Kinahan, the boxing promoter and organised crime, coming out. Not good for boxing. Obviously, there's the England cricket captain vacancy. Ben Stokes is in the frame. The Ricketts family have withdrawn from the bidding process. The Chicago Cupboards owners who were interested in buying Chelsea have withdrawn from the bidding process for Chelsea Football Club as well. So that's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the ownership side of Chelsea. Their special operating license runs out in 6 weeks' time. And obviously the deal needs to be done before then. Otherwise, they face the prospect of going into administration and then an uncertain future, which could lead to points deductions and other sanctions against them. I think that's obviously having an impact on players at the club. They have got several key players, Christensen, Azpilicueta, and Rudiger in their defensive core, all coming off contract at the end of this season. So it's going to be very interesting if the deal can be done before the 31st of May. Otherwise, players are going to be able to leave on a free. Is Burnley down and will Dyche get a new job? I think, yeah. I think Yes, Jackson's the interim boss, and he's worked with the under 23, so he knows the club culture. He's worked with a lot of the players as they came through the system, those that came through the youth system at Burnley. He's coached in the Football League at Tranmere and Shrewsbury, so he's not an inexperienced manager in his own right. Um, but I think, yeah, that's Everton safe now. I can't see Watford and Norwich bridging the gap with 8 games remaining. I really can't. I look. The players are left in shock by it. I think the timing is weird. They only gave him a contract extension in September. They gave him a contract extension in September till 2025, which which I find bizarre that they decided to sack him at the timing they did. They gave him that contract extension. I don't know with Burnley what's going to happen. And as a Blackburn fan, I should be overjoyed by Burnley's poor form and their situation and where they find themselves, but I'm not, because I actually like Sean Dyche as a manager. Um, he guided Burnley to their first European appearance in over 50 odd years, a couple of seasons ago with a seventh place finish. So it's not as if he's working with poor players, but the lack of investment, and it is a club with American ownership as well. There's American investment there. Um, is troubling. I think the COVID pandemic has had an impact on the amount of investment into Burnley Football Club. Um, Burnley itself, if you look at Southeast Lancashire, uh, the economy of Burnley, up the road in Blackburn, they've got more money in the sense of economically with cash to spend and disposable income. So the fan base is not the wealthiest fan base. It's a very niche, it's a close knit community. Um, so the fan base doesn't have as much disposable income as other fan bases in the northwest. Economically, Burnley is a very deprived city or town. It's got a high unemployment rate. The football club was a bright light in the community, and brought positive attention to Burnley, where in the past Burnley's had a lot of negative attention for community tensions, rioting, lack of employment opportunities, high poverty rate. Uh, it'll be interesting to see if results improve, but that means every team in the bottom six has now changed manager at least once this season. Um, It's only 4 points. Yes, it is, but they've only won 1 in 6. So their form has to drastically improve if they are to overhaul the gap to Everton and then the clubs above and close that gap and get a respectful finish. But they've been in the bottom four all season. Their season they got off to a poor start. Then the COVID outbreaks within the squad hit, so they had a lot of games postponed, which then congested their fixture schedule. Um, Going forward. They didn't win those games in hand that they had, which I think has proved crucial. Yes, you'll get a new job. There's no doubt on that. You'll honestly get a new job somewhere. I think even before Christmas. I think even in the summer he might be appointed to a new position. I have no doubt on that. There are going to be clubs looking for a new manager in the football league, in the Premiership. In the summer. I have no doubt on that. There's some uncertainty over a lot of clubs right now. In regards to, even though Eric Ten Hag is the manager of Man United, for example, he's not confirmed yet. They're in advanced discussions, but he's not put pen to paper to say I'm going to be the new manager from next season. Um, there, you know, there are other clubs that will be moving on with managerial changes. There's going to be some managers leaving their positions. So yeah, I think Dyche will get a job in what league and what club I don't know. He won't be able to work very long. Um, Coventry or Stoke, I mean, it could be a good fit. One of those clubs for Sean Dyche. It could be. We There's been a lot of rumours linking him with possible move to Blackburn, which will be wouldn't necessarily go down with the fan base well, but there's a possibility he could be snapped up by another Championship club. There's a possibility he could end up in League One or League Two. There are there's going to be managerial turnaround in the summer. That we can have no doubt. Yes, it's only 4 points, but I think making the decision now is panic. It's a weird decision. If there was going to be a change made that could have had a positive impact on the club, do it before Christmas, before the transfer window opens. That would be my opinion on the situation. The fact they offered him a contract, they gave him a contract extension only in September until 2025. Um, I don't know. I don't think Tony Mowbray is. I think performances in the last couple of months have been poor, and I think we've run out of steam a little bit. We had a very good start to the season. Tony Mowbray's been there for 5 years, but we're better. We're a better team than what we were last season. We're ahead of where we were last season. I don't mind us not getting promoted because I think if Blackburn were to, let's say, make the, we're still not out of the playoff race yet. There's still games to play, and we can still turn things around. We've got a better goal difference than some clubs around us, and it is a, a heated battle for the playoff places. We're only 2 points out of the playoffs, so we could still make it into the playoffs. But our league form recently hasn't been good enough, and going into the playoffs in poor form is not a good way to if you were to make the Premier League, go about it. I think we can learn a lot from this season. I don't think Mowbray's under pressure. We're not in a relegation fight. We're around the playoffs. I think we're ahead of where we were last year. I think we've had a better season uh, than we expected. Brereton Diaz, I don't know. He seems quite happy at the club, and I don't know on that. That's an interesting one. If we do lose him, that means we're going to get a lot of money, though. If a Premier League club or a European club is interested in signing him, that's going to be a fair transfer fee, I would expect, as he is now an international player with Chile, and that's been a fantastic story. It's a fantastic story. Him representing Chile and playing for the Chilean national side. That's a fantastic story, I have to admit, and it fills me as a fan with pride that we have developed that player. And if we were a Premier League club, England would have been sniffing around Brereton Diaz. As it is, that's another player that has been developed in the UK, and is now lost to the national setup, not because of the league he's playing necessarily, but he chose his allegiance elsewhere. Now, this has happened a lot with a lot of players who are eligible before they were, made their international appearances for other nations, who could have played for England, who could have had a positive impact on the England side. Wilfried Zaha is another one who could have played for England, and has decided to play elsewhere. And that that is a frustrating one from an England, well, a UK point of view, because some of these players could also play for Scotland or Wales or Northern Ireland. But from a British footballing fan's point of view, when you have a player like that coming through the system, coming through the academies in this country, being developed by a club in this country, who then when another country works out, oh, you are actually eligible through parentage or residency to play for us, and then doesn't play for one of the home nations. That is frustrating. It is, but it's an indictment of the English system, quite frankly. And whether he moves on or stays, it all depends on you know it all depends on a lot of things. Haaland, he's Norwegian. He's now represented Norway too many times to change allegiance. There's a big debate about if he goes to City or another big club. City's been linked with him for a long time, and Dortmund, they have a track record of developing talent. The German league has a track record of developing talent, and the German system, they're more likely, to get into the first team the way the system works. Um, but yeah, imagine the thing with Harry Kane is, yes, he scores a lot of goals. The way at times he can be a bit streaky with his goal scoring. There's no doubt on that. He can be very, very streaky with his goal scoring. His fitness is a concern, and the contract he has at Tottenham and the way he wanted to leave last summer, I think that's still unresolved. I think Man City and Man United were both sniffing around Harry Kane this time last year. I could see City, Liverpool, United with a new manager. There's going to be a clear out of Man United in the summer, whoever comes in. Most likely Ten Hag from Ajax, but that's still not confirmed. I can see United being very active in the transfer market this summer. I think the board and it's going to be under a lot of pressure from the fan base to make positive changes. Now, whether Eric Ten Hag is actually the right guy to be Manchester United manager, well, we've said that about every manager that's come into Man United since Alex Ferguson. This is the guy. It hasn't worked. This is the guy. It hasn't worked. So there has to come a point where these good managers, these are not inexperienced managers going to Man United. These are guys who've managed in Europe or in England before. And if they're having the same problem time after time, then you have to start asking the question about the club culture, the dressing room culture, the structures at the club. And that's more of an issue than Eric Ten Hag is going to have the same problems that Solskjaer had. He's going to have the same problems that Mourinho had, Van Gaal had. He's going to have the same issues that his predecessors had since 2013. How heavily will Grealish be relied on in the World Cup? I don't know. We don't know who's. Obviously, the World Cup is taking. In a normal year, the World Cup would be like 2 months away, and we would already have a rough idea who's going to be in and around the squad, what players are fully fit and available. Because the World Cup is taking place in winter, in December, and November, and it's being played at an odd time of year. We can't predict who's going to be in the squad because Grealish could have a bad injury. His form could completely drop off. We don't know who's going to be in that England squad at the end of the year. What we do know is he's clearly part of the setup right now, and he's clearly, obviously, his move from Villa to Man City. Some fans weren't overly enamoured with that. He plays a different role at Man City than he does at Aston Villa, so that's, you want him to play his natural game, and I don't think he plays his fully natural game with England. And he's sort of playing a slightly different role at City than what he did at Villa, which I think may not be suiting him as well as a player and what he can do on and off the ball. But as I say, that there are other attack-minded midfielders that could go to the World Cup. And there's some more. I think we need a more box-to-box midfielder as well. We need someone to give Jordan Henderson some extra support, because I was not sold on our Euro squad having the right balance, and in the end, that actually proved crucial in the final. Not having that right attack and defence balance in the midfield. Huge question marks about Harry Maguire, whether he's going to stay at Man United or whether he's going to leave in the summer. And we are expecting a big clear out of Man United in the summer. There's going to be some player movement from Old Trafford in a couple of months. It's going to be interesting what happens at the World Cup. I think the time of year it's being played may benefit some other nations. I think it's going to be a different experience for a lot of the squads. Playing a tournament at that time of year, I think the African nations could definitely take a benefit from that, because they play the Africa Cup of Nations in the middle of winter. So we could have a very unpredictable tournament. Very unpredictable tournament. How heavily Grealish is relied upon, that's a very open-ended question. It's how long's a piece of string. It depends on the players that go, and we could have players have this semi-final between Liverpool and Man City. Players have a nasty injury, and that could be a lengthy spell on the sidelines where they're not playing. Anything can happen. I'm not surprised with anything in sport anymore. With what's happened to Mason Greenwood this season, and he has returned to training, and we will find out about if he's facing charges or not in a few weeks at the most. The situation around Mason Greenwood, for example, something like that could happen, where an off-field incident leads to a player being suspended. We've seen it with Eric Cantona in the past. So, that was with the interaction with the fan, but we could see an off-field incident take a player out. We could see any number of things could happen between now and the World Cup. It's too far out to say this is going to be the definite squad going forward. This is going to be the team. This is going to be the starting lineup. This is going to be the squad rotation. So much can happen. We've got the European Nations League games in June. We've still got World Cup qualifiers and playoffs to be decided. So there's still teams yet to qualify as well. So talking about the World Cup, I think we're too far out to really have an accurate idea of how Grealish is going to be used, how important he's going to be to England's creative side of play and going forward. I think Ward Prowse will probably get in the squad this time. I was very surprised he was omitted from the Euros with his dead ball ability and what he does from set plays. Um, so there's a lot of unknowns. Yeah, I think we're too far out from the tournament to get an accurate idea of who's going to be in the squad, and you know players may not be fully fit. Because we will be starting a football league season in August, admittedly a week earlier, but we will be starting the league season, and then obviously going forward from there. Do I think Arsenal will get top four after Spurs lost to Brighton? That's going to be a very interesting race for the top four spots. Don't forget West Ham aren't out of it either. You've got Wolves floating around there. That's not a guaranteed spot for any club at the moment. Um, but Spurs being Spursy, running out of steam at the end of the season, another trophy this season for Spurs. It'll be interesting. Arsenal have to be very, very consistent and play very, very well. I think Arteta is the right man to take Arsenal forward, having played there as well, so he knows the club culture, what the club's about. Do I think Arsenal get top four? It's too early to tell. This might go down to the last day of the season again. We've been here before. The Premier League title might go down to the last day of the season, and I think this FA Cup semi-final could go a long way to giving us an idea whether it's City or Liverpool, because players can get injured in this semi-final, and how much did those European nights in midweek take out of them? I think Arsenal, are in a good position because Tottenham's slipping up, but Tottenham really for they Tottenham have just choked away. Tottenham had an opportunity in 2016 to win the title. They ended up finishing third. They were neck and neck with Leicester throughout the entire season, and then in the last 6-7 weeks they fell out. They just stopped playing. So they've got a track record of choking things. Man United are out of it though. They've got to play Liverpool, Anfield, Arsenal, and Chelsea, and also Palace and Brighton. Palace are playing quite well. Their form is terrifying right now. They're in a real reign of form, and I think they're going to be very motivated for the semi-final tomorrow. And if they win that could be a massive boost for Palace. Palace are dangerous. They've got some great players. Um, Brighton, Brighton are a very good side. They're an underrated side, to be fair. They're a very good side. Graham Potter is a very, very underrated manager, in my opinion. Brighton, yeah, Brighton I don't think should be underestimated at all. And Liverpool are in a title hunt. Arsenal, that famous rivalry, they want to reignite that a little bit. And I think back in the day, that was the biggest rivalry I think in the English game for about 5-6 years. That was the most heated rivalry I think. When both Man United and Arsenal were at the peak of their powers in the late 90s, 2000s, that was some of the best games to watch as a neutral. Chelsea, they are a wounded beast. They're vulnerable. I think Chelsea are vulnerable right now. The off-field issues with Chelsea, I think, are definitely now having an impact on the players, because there's some players at Chelsea who are off contract at the end of the season that they can't re-sign on their current operating license. So until the new owners are in place, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty within that playing squad about, where am I playing next season? Because a lot of players could be available on a free to leave. And the longer the bidding process for Chelsea takes, the more uncertainty around, where players are going to be playing next season is going to be playing on their minds. Azpilicueta, Rudiger, and Christensen, for example, in the Chelsea back four, all of them are off contract in 6-7 weeks. So, and their form has been a bit poor lately. Chelsea are vulnerable, so but I don't know. I want a Liverpool Man United title race every time Liverpool dominate. Man United rubbish, and every time Man United do with Liverpool being poor. As I say, club success is very cyclical, very, very cyclical. And now Jurgen Klopp is now the longest serving Premier League manager. I think Guardiola is second. So with Sean Dyche losing his job yesterday, as I say, clubs that regularly change manager have less stability and generally less success. And Man United, how many managers have you had since 2013? And that includes interims as well. I'll add Ryan Giggs into that. You've had Moyes, Giggs, Van Gaal, Mourinho, Solskjaer, Carrick, Rangnick, and they haven't officially appointed Ten Hag yet. While he is in advanced discussions, they could collapse. They could break down. I'm very surprised, however, that United put Rangnick in for 6 months as interim. I did not understand that decision then. I don't understand the decision now. It hasn't led to an improvement in the side, I don't think. Not consistent. And Harry Maguire's performance is. I do feel that Harry Maguire at Hull and Harry Maguire at Leicester, there was a difference. He had a senior centre back alongside him. He had senior players around him. So at Leicester, for example, where's Morgan? What Leicester have done since Maguire's left is win. They won the FA Cup, they win the Charity Shield. So Brendan Rodgers has brought silverware with buying players into, with the Harry Maguire money, and the club has invested in new training facilities and community facilities with the Harry Maguire money. They've invested back in the community, which is a lot of clubs don't do that. And yeah, Chelsea is notwithstanding, as I say, when it comes to football, with regularly changing the coach is Chelsea. I will admit, I always say that. I say it in my Sean Dyche video when he gets sacked. Notwithstanding Chelsea under the Abramovich era, but I think that the structures at the club, it doesn't matter what manager slots in. The support structure is set up in such a way that the manager can change the tactics and the formation, but the player development and the recruitment is still going to be the same as what it was with the previous manager. There's the backroom structures allow for a new manager to slot in, and if he wants to change the formation, fine, or the style of play. But there are structures in place at Chelsea that are more supportive for the manager coming in than at Man United. Man United, there's clearly issues with the off-field structures at the club, and what is the thing is difference between United and Chelsea is Chelsea have won quite a lot of trophies. United have won very few trophies in the same time frame. And there's your difference. Is that's got to be the club structures behind the scenes, off the field, behind closed doors, the support staff, the youth program, the youth systems, the support structures go a long way. Liverpool are a second club. Man United are starting to become like Chelsea, but without the success. A lot of clubs are starting to do. Chelsea set off a trend in English football, which I think has had a lot of negative consequences. And I think they're going to have to start looking at changing the rules about that, because so many clubs are spending so much money in compensation payments. I mean, look, Sean Dyche was given a contract extension until 2025 in September. So I don't understand Burnley's thinking when they're going to have to pay him out a huge sum of cash. And this is a club that operates on a far smaller budget. That's going to really hurt Burnley going forward next season. Is that payout to Sean Dyche? It's going to really hurt Burnley badly. Financially, they're very well run. They're very prudent in their spending. They're very wise in their spending. But to offer a guy a 4-year contract extension and then sack him within 8 months is a head scratcher for me. If they were going to make a decision, they should have done it before Christmas or at the end of the season. Last 10 years, Man United had 6 different managers. Liverpool have only got 2. Yeah. And I know Brendan Rodgers, it didn't go as well as it should have. He's gone to Leicester and has had a happy time at Leicester. He's obviously had his time at Celtic as well. And he's gone to have success elsewhere. He also had success, with getting Swansea to the Premier League and building his reputation there. So I think Brendan Rodgers is happy at Leicester. There's been a lot of, rumours linking him to the United job. He's not going anywhere. Graham Potter, he's not going anywhere. Why do football teams seem to have a tougher time finding the guy than any other sport? I haven't followed football long with them. It's the promotion relegation side of things that European and South American football leagues have. Um, there's a lot of pressure to win things. It's very very difficult to find the right fit for a club. I think it's the amount of money as well that goes into European football, and and now I mean, Sean Dyche was with Burnley for a decade. Eddie Howe was with Bournemouth for I think 12 years, and they operated on smaller budgets in the Premier League than other clubs. Um, and they were the two longest tenured managers going into COVID, the COVID pandemic. But you won't find a manager like a Wenger or a Ferguson who will do 2, 3 decades at a club. It just won't happen anymore. The modern game is 5, 6 years. That's a long spell for a manager at a club now. 3 years is seen as pretty average for a successful manager at a club winning some trophies. Um, Managers aren't given time. Owners expect results like that. They expect results straight away, and I think Klopp. The reason why he's now the longest tenured manager, same with Guardiola, as the second longest manager at a club in the Premier League, is they brought success to their clubs. They've got to Champions League finals and FA Cup finals, and they've won League Cups, and they've won Premierships, and they've won. Guardiola hasn't won the Champions League with Man City, but they've been successful. They've also had a fair bit of money behind them in the ownership groups that own their clubs. Now, Man City initially were like Chelsea a little bit. Now, Mancini was the first manager under the Mansour ownership to bring them silverware. Then you had Pellegrini. Then you had Pellegrini won them some silverware, and now Guardiola. But before then, they had multiple managers they went through under the current ownership. The current ownership has realised, okay, let's keep a manager there for 3, 4 seasons. Let's give them a bit of stability. And so their last three managers have brought them silverware. Their previous several, it was chopping and changing until they got Mancini in. Now Mancini's won international honours with Italy. You can see why he was the right appointment to begin the culture shift within that Man City dressing room to go from, right, we've got all the money. He then gave them that pathway to success. So for the last decade, they've been very, very successful. The first 4 or 5 years, they were all over the place. And when Guardiola took over, they finished eighth. So it's not guaranteed that it's going to work straight away with a new manager. Now, how long Guardiola stays at City and how long Klopp stays at Liverpool, how long's a piece of string? I don't think either manager is going to be willing to move on or resign. I don't think the ownership of either club wants to sack them. Now, if let's say Germany have a poor World Cup, Klopp could be attracted by the German FA to become Germany head manager. Guardiola has mentioned that he might be interested in international management. Could Spain or another nation come calling? Maybe the US team, for example. Could if a nation has a bad World Cup and decides to change coach, could Guardiola and Klopp be enticed away from Anfield and the Etihad to I don't know. Liverpool generally stick with their managers. They generally do. I mean, Houllier they gave a fair bit of support to in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he brought them some success with some silverware. And then they had a bit of chopping and changing until they got Klopp. Well, Rodgers first, and then Klopp. I think Brendan Rodgers laid the platform for what Klopp has now got. And Brendan Rodgers, has gone on to have success at other clubs as well. I think Man City took some, experimenting before they got their managerial appointments right with the ownership they have. But how long Guardiola stays there and how long Klopp stays at Anfield, that is going to be the interesting thing. With every other club is chopping and changing, chopping and changing, chopping and changing. I think Arteta's going to be at Arsenal for a little while, and he has brought them some silverware. and I think there'll be a mistake to sack Mikel Arteta. Um, I don't know. In regards to Chelsea, it's an interesting one with Chelsea. How long can that model of constantly chopping and changing manager pay off? This season, they've only yes, they won the World Club tournament, and last season they won the Champions League. It was Lampard's team, but it was Tuchel's tactics. But Lampard built the foundations for the team that Tuchel now has, ironically. In regards to Chelsea, domestic and European trophies this season, they're only left with the hope of winning the FA Cup. And if Palace beat them, that's a trophyless domestic season, which is considered failure by Chelsea standards. But now Abramovich is no longer the owner, so depending on who takes over the club, will Tuchel still be coached? That's that. Generally, when a takeover happens, there's generally a coaching change. It happened at Newcastle where Bruce was out and Eddie Howe in. Performances improved. And while Newcastle are below where they were last season in where they're going to finish, uh, Eddie Howe has definitely turned that club around. Now, going forward, they're going to be spending a lot of money in the summer. They're going to be very active in the transfer market. Uh, question marks over Chelsea second to Shell would be a massive mistake, but I wouldn't be surprised. It all depends on which ownership group that's bidding for the club, because the Ricketts group has pulled out now. They're saying it's for economic reasons. They couldn't get, because of the peculiar circumstances, etc. No, the fans told them to basically do what they didn't want. The Ricketts ownership group, they were made it very clear from when they announced themselves as interested parties, they didn't want them. They there was definite issues with some of the ownership group, the Ricketts family, with some rather some racial slurs aimed at the Islamic community, those of Muslim faith, that have gone down really poorly, and that was dug up um, and shared widely on social media. And the Chelsea fans weren't overly well, and there's been question marks about how the Cubs are run as well. So the Chelsea fans made that very, very clear. There was protests, very similar to the European Super League protest that happened like this time last year, outside Stamford Bridge. Whoever comes in has to be very, very careful with how they approach the club. Now, I have to get going to my game. Have a great rest. I'm going to be watching the FA Cup semi final in a bit. Could give you something to look up and learn about the end of the do sometimes. Have a good. Something to look up and learn about. Okay. Look up and learn about the foundation of the Football League in 1888 and the foundation of the RFL in 1895. That would be what I would recommend. So rugby football, so rugby league, the foundation of rugby league in 1895, and the break from rugby union in Huddersfield. I'll do a video on the foundation of the RFL and the birth of rugby league, and the foundation of the Football League in 1888. That'll be something that I want you to look up if you want to learn a little bit about some of the sports that I'm a big fan of. Liverpool, Man City, and Arsenal ain't sacking clubs. Man United, Chelsea, and Tottenham are no wonder why Liverpool and City are constantly fighting for the title, and Chelsea struggle around December time. Well, Chelsea have won a lot of trophies, but I think that business model, that footballing model of chopping and changing the manager constantly and expecting the same success result, I think it's worn its course. Now, the new owners, they've got to stop doing that. Whoever comes in has got to give either back Tuchel or replace Tuchel with a new guy, and then support that guy going forward. If they decide, like Abramovich, constantly chopping and changing, Chelsea will struggle. If they back Tuchel, fine. If they decide, right, okay, we're going to part ways now with the new owners, we're not renewing your contract, we're going to find a replacement, that is fine. I have no problem with that. Whether it's a mistake or not, we'll have to wait and see. But if they decide, they go, Thomas Tuchel, we're not renewing your contract. We're going to go in a different direction. We want to build a certain type of culture or a style of play, and if we don't think your tactics suit the style of play that we want and the product we want to sell to our fans, they have to be careful with that. If results go bad towards the end of the season and they tail off with the squad they've got, and the new owners come in, hopefully before the 31st of May, it's all finalised, and the new owners come in and they're like assessing how the season went, and where the club ended up and why they're so far back of the top three or top two or wherever they finish, because they're not. I think they are guaranteed third place, but they get if they lose to Palace in the FA Cup semi-final tomorrow, they don't win any domestic or European trophies this season, and there is a clear gap between City and Liverpool and them. There could be some questions about Tuchel's position within the club. I think new owners should at least give him the next full season to bring players in, offload some players, refresh that squad a bit, put more of his imprint on the team because the team he inherited, and it's still largely the same as Lampard's team. That is what is very important. The team and squad he's got is predominantly what Lampard put together when they had the transfer embargo, and there's some leftovers from Conte and Mourinho and others in that playing squad. So I want to see when Tuchel has done a full squad overhaul and the players he brings in, the style of football he wants to play with his players, what Chelsea look like, because then we have a rough idea of where Chelsea are going. If that is the case, the owners have to back him. But generally speaking, when there's an ownership change, the manager changes either straight away or very shortly after. So it'll be interesting what happens at Chelsea. I think to keep the fans on side, they'll keep Tuchel for a period. And then if, let's say, next season they get off to a poor start, or they're not successful in the transfer market, attracting players, or if they can't get the deal done before the 31st of May, and Azpilicueta, Rudiger, and Christensen leave as free agents on free transfers, and other clubs just go, we'll offer you a contract. Because I could see a club like Brentford going in for Azpilicueta or Rudiger and going, you're a free, we'll have you, we're just down the road. I could see a club like Fulham getting, if and when Fulham get promoted, coming in and picking up some Chelsea players. Conor Gallagher, Palace might go, can we sign him? Because if they cannot get the deal done before the 31st of May and the special operation licence, there has to be a renegotiation on that. They can't still sign in new players, but players are coming off contract. So it's crucial that this deal gets done, and it's going to be interesting to see what Chelsea do in the transfer market this summer and what happens to that playing squad. Arsenal will be better than Chelsea soon. Arsenal doing similar stuff. What was? Yeah, I think Arteta's the right guy. He's learned from Guardiola as an assistant at Man City. Um, he's obviously a long time playing in the league at Everton and Arsenal. Um, he's got managerial experience. He's won silverware now. Um, he's dealt with the Aubameyang contract issue by getting rid of him and getting rid of the toxic element from the dressing room, which I think has definitely improved the situation by removing a toxic element from the dressing room. I still think Arsenal are a bit soft in the sense they're not physical enough. They don't have that gritty kind of. Granit Xhaka, he's got a poor disciplinary record. That's not the type of toughness you necessarily want. You might want a player who's a bit more, hard but fair. But they don't have that grit and determination. When things start going wrong with Arsenal, they give up. So their mental fortitude isn't quite there. It's not the Arsenal sides of the late 90s and 2000s under Wenger. There is definitely, and George Graham before that in the 90s, where you had a character like a Steve Bold and a Ray Parlour, who didn't have those energy players. So that's something that's lacking from Arsenal. So Arsenal need to have a look at their style of playing and go, we are missing something. Okay, that more, not one dimensional, but more box to box kind of midfielder, that more glue kind of character or characters, those slightly less skillful players, but players with a lot of energy, good work rate, hard working, good work ethic, good in the dressing room as well, good on the training ground with the younger players, grizzled veterans. They're lacking a bit of that veteran presence where they get bullied too easily. The Nottingham Forest game in the FA Cup, that was the worst I've seen an Arsenal team play in a very, very long time, even when they were getting some bad defeats towards the end of the Wenger era. Worst I've seen Arsenal play in a very, very long time. No commitment. Man United to win 4-1, Arsenal to win 2-1, Liverpool beat Man City 3-1, Chelsea beat Palace 1-0. I think Palace beat Chelsea. I think Chelsea are a little bit vulnerable right now. I think Liverpool, Man City might go to extra time penalties. Simply because the league game finished 2-2, and Liverpool have closed that gap on City. City have blown a comfortable, I think it was 12 points or 11, 12 points at 1 point lead in the Premier League. They were coasting and they've blown that Premiership lead they had. It's going to be close. So City aren't invincible. They are vulnerable. They're not the record-breaking team of a couple of seasons ago. That's not going to. And neither are Liverpool, to be fair. I think that the gap between Liverpool and City and actually the rest, they are losing more games now. They're not the 100-point teams that we've seen a few years back. Chelsea, I have concerns about Chelsea. I think the off-field dramas are now starting to really impact the playing group. And the battle for fourth place to seventh, the battle for the rest of the European places is hotting up. And of course, imagine if Leicester win the Conference League and that then really mixes up the European qualification. So there are clubs in the Premier League who are still in Europe, and that really then jumbles up everything. Would it be amazing if Palace beat Chelsea? But I don't see Chelsea play better than at Stamford Bridge. I don't know. I think they have an opportunity. The way they played their form, going. If you're looking at form, Chelsea have got worse form going into this game than Palace. And Palace haven't played a midweek game, which has exhausted them. So I think the advantages with Palace, I think they're going to be a fresher squad, both mentally and physically. Vieira's got them playing well. Losing Conor Gallagher for the game because he's cup tied and Chelsea not allowing him to play, I think, is something that the FA needs to look at with loan transfers, cup time players. That's something that needs to be looked at because he's a key component of Palace. But they can they don't they, when he's not playing, they don't necessarily miss him. They've got a bit of squad depth now. I can see Chelsea being vulnerable. I can. I don't think that they are a wounded animal right now, and Palace are playing very very well. And the gulf in class between the two sides is not as evident as it was, let's say, 5 years ago. So I think Vieira's done a great job at Palace, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does in the transfer market because there's a lot of Roy Hodgson era players at Palace still, and it'll be interesting to see the imprint that Vieira will have going forward, building his side. And I like what Vieira's doing at Palace, and if they do win the FA Cup, there could be some pressure on Arteta at Arsenal. And of course, Vieira's also played at Man City as well. So Patrick Vieira, Arsenal and Man City may want his managerial services in a year or two's time. So Palace will do very well to keep him. And if they do win the FA Cup, that's silverware. And that goes on the CV. And that's something that not every manager has on their CV is I've won domestic silverware. And I think Palace are dangerous. They should not be underestimated tomorrow. Really. Score prediction for Chelsea Palace. I'm going for a shock 2-0 to Palace. I am. I'm going for a shock 2-0 to Crystal Palace. I think they're going to be very motivated. I think Chelsea are going to be very fatigued from the midweek game. And of course, the off-field dramas with Chelsea are now, I think, having an impact. And that cannot be disguised anymore with what's happened in recent weeks. That's got to be having a massive impact with the uncertainty surrounding who's going to be owning the club for next season and player uncertainty with, where am I going to be playing next season? I think Palace are going to do it. I think Palace will win 2-0. I just have a feeling. The way they dispatched Everton so clinically, they wouldn't do that 2 years ago. They have, and their form they're on, they're in real good nick right now. They're in a real good vein of form. They have no fear. I see Chelsea as vulnerable. I do, and I see Tuchel with the manager under a lot of pressure now. What happens to Thomas Tuchel? His contract's in place, but as I say, the new owners will be reviewing this season with Chelsea and looking at, making changes. How much of the club structures that are currently in place from the Abramovich era stay, and then looking at the results. This is the last trophy Chelsea can compete for. They're technically, if we're going by technicalities and being anal, they can still win the Premier League technically if both Liverpool and Man City lose every remaining game. Not going to happen. The gap. Liverpool have closed the gap to City. Chelsea haven't. So they're and it'll be interesting to see the direction. But I think Palace beat Chelsea 2-0. I've got a feeling Palace are gonna upset things a little bit and spring a surprise on them. The playing conditions are perfect. The weather is perfect. You couldn't ask for better playing conditions. You couldn't ask for better weather. Um, Considering where we were like 2 weeks ago, where it was snowing outside and it was cold and it was miserable and there was a lot of rain and we've had a lot of weather's it's 20 odd degrees outside, beautiful sunny day, nice warm mid spring day. Weather's beautiful. The playing surface will be perfect. It'll be interesting to see how much the groundsman walk the pitch, how slick the pitch is, and how fast paced the game is today and the game tomorrow. But I think the way Palace play with their energy, their pace off the ball, their pace on the ball, um, I can see Chelsea struggling. I can, but it all depends. It all depends on squad selection, who's available, and how fit and how tired that Chelsea side are with all those extra games they played this season as well. This is where the fixture congestion starts taking its toll. Squad rotation's important, and Lukaku's still not performing great. And I do think Palace will easily isolate Lukaku with the style of football they play. But they play with energy and pace, and if Lukaku's off, he'll be isolated up front, and then getting the link play in is going to be difficult. And the way it's not just the Wilfred Zaha show at Palace. Elise is playing really well. Ayu's had a resurgence in form. Uh, the whole team is playing better than what it was when Vieira first took over. They've really changed things there. They're on course for a good league finish position. Palace are confident, and I think that's dangerous. I think Chelsea are in a very vulnerable situation. They're very vulnerable right now. You know, but we'll see what happens. How much mental and physical energy do they leave on the field in midweek? We'll have to wait and see. And the same with Liverpool, Man City. I'm going Chelsea 1-0 Palace. Lukaku will score in 60 there, but never had City, Liverpool, Salah will score in for him. Jesus, dear. Um, Again, the Liverpool City game, I think that's going to go to extra time and penalties. If the league match they had the other day, which was a 2-2 with anything to go, but I think it's going to be a very close game. Um, but yet again, we'll see what happens, and we'll see how much fatigue, mental and physical, has been left on the field in the midweek games. The Atletico Madrid game could have proved crucial for City. How much how that was a very physical game. How much did that take out of them? And Liverpool Benfica, that was a classic, but how much is that taken out of these two sides? Going into this game, and the weather conditions with it being quite warm, no breeze. It will be interesting to see how this game plays out. But anyway, I'm going to leave that there because I'm going to get a bite to eat, a cup of tea. I'm going to obviously watch the semi-final, and then I'll do the match review, and then I'll have obviously more content coming up this evening as well. So thank you very much for all your questions. Really appreciate it, and I'll have some more content for you very, very soon. I think Liverpool will win as well. I think they want it more, but we'll see. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.